delivery itself.
Gary, this slide presupposes a perfect world in which you can stop the clock, get your IT all fixed, optimise it, and then start the clock again.
Well, and of course that's not reality, obviously. Yeah. So it's a heterogeneous environment. The IT guys, like you say, are bewildered oftentimes with the complexity that's in front of them, a huge Gantt chart of project deliverables that they're committed to the business. And it's about trying to find ways of analysing the business problem in the domain of the business problem that allows you to be more creative perhaps and find new ways of innovating and driving solutions. So one example, classic example, is where the kind of classic on-the-glass integration of a business process in a portal perhaps, as we would say in IT terminology, which allows you to overcome or hide the complexity underneath what you're actually trying to put onto the glass for the consumer. But that is a way of kind of masking or showing and building a business process that the users are very happy with, that actually gives them more value perhaps in how they're doing the handoffs perhaps between business process. But it's not actually necessarily needing to solve lots of complexity down in the weeds of the technology perhaps. And so there are different ways that you can get to a better place that is more incremental, which is controlled change, and hopefully if you can do that on a sustained basis, you start to, there's kind of like a throttling mechanism that applies. You can start to open the throttle and get more creative more and accelerate the process of delivery if you can build your proof points in a measured way. So it's about being pragmatic and measured in your approach rather than revolutionary, because nobody's going to buy that, especially in the current climate. If you can't deliver value 3 months, 6 months out, then nobody's really going to listen to you for very long if you're an IT function.
A lot of the time for me, it's really about, it's not about trying to solve big problems. It's about back to removing the bottlenecks and just going out to real people in the organisation and saying, so what do you do? How does it work? God, never realised that you do that, and then you hand off to that person there, and then they do exactly the same thing because they didn't know
you've done it. Yeah.
And the kind of business modelling workshops and all that jazz that go on, they sound very boring and sound very consultancy, but in actual fact what often happens in those sessions is it's just getting different parts of the business to talk to each other and start working out what the different parts of the business does.
John, some people will be watching this and they'll be thinking, you idiot, we do this already. Well, they might not be thinking, you idiot, I just put that in for effect.
I'd be prepared to accept that.
But hasn't a lot of effort already been put into this?
And I do find I've had this conversation with some people, and they go, well, of course, don't be ridiculous, of course. They've said, you've got no idea how businesses really work, or whatever. But equally, I've sat down with Madge in accounts, and I've gone over to see Fred in the warehouse, and we've had these conversations, and Fred has said, God, if Madge just gave me that format, I'd be able to save an hour a day. Mm-hmm. It's that stuff we're talking about here, really.
I mean, I agree, and I think that's the kind of paradox I speak of, is when you actually, to use the terminology, once you try and codify, so to speak, the understanding that exists in Madge or in Fred, in a way that allows you to inform your design thinking and your implementation thinking, you can then start to really start to solve the problem in new ways, innovative ways, and that's the paradox I talked about. Very simple techniques like having sensible conversation with the people that really do the job of work allow you to build bridges between what the business is really trying to achieve and how it might really be efficient, as opposed to line number 143 on my mega list of projects I've got to deliver for finance next quarter.
If there's one term role I would love to see ruled out forever, it's data entry clerk, because it says you're a slave to the machine, you don't have a life, you are entirely wed to the computer. Your job is, you don't have a job, your function is to just put information into the machine. Get rid of it. Let's have salespeople, let's have customer people, let's have people that interact with people, and the computer is the subordinate thing. But I think that that's the individual productivity side of things, and it's got to link, as you say, back into the top-down view and how the business is trying to drive forward.
Yeah, and so part of the next slide, part of the bridge back. I mean, we do a lot of work with the CXO, the C-suite community, so that we can endeavour as a technology provider working with business to try and find ways to pass the so what test.
These are the things they want.
Yeah, so this is our analysis from our most recent study that talks about, in conclusion, this is the net slide that talks about, they want to be, able to make changes at will. It's the kind of design point for the business, is that as a CEO, CFO, they want to be able to make quick decisions about radical change to the business model and not be encumbered in that change by IT. In fact, they want IT to enable that. capability. So that's the kind of nirvana. That's really what the boardroom would like IT to function as. And so you could take a view on particular lines like this. In the case of the bottom around corporate responsibility, for example, that these days is seen as a potential growth agenda opportunity for a boardroom. So down in the level of a necessity to keep the lights on, as I mentioned before, regulatory compliance might be one cell in that diagram that says you've got to, as a minimum, be able to satisfy the regulation requirements. That's what keeps the lights on. But actually what I'd really like to do is turn that kind of capability into allowing me to say, I can evidence, not just in my annual report, but in my ethical mechanisms inside the business and process, that I'm actually being, as it says on the chart, genuine, not just generous in terms of my philanthropy, but actually showing that you're managing your business in an appropriate way that satisfies your shareholder values, but also keeps you compliant and keeps, as I say, the lights on. And that's just kind of one area. That might be a particular focus, a particular type of organisation. And you could go through that list and pick your choice. I summarise it by saying it's really about change and the ability to be dynamic in prompting that change and assimilating changes as radically as you can. If you can do that, then the boardroom gets very, very pleased with IT if you're actually part of that equation.
As we can see from this slide, there are a lot of things. And the ability to be dynamic is a simple way of saying you've got to do a lot of very complicated things, but also retain control at the same time.
Yeah.
It's I think we're somewhat underrepresenting the amount of problems this would pose to the people who are watching this.
Having said that, I had the question previously about whether or not this was possible, whether it wasn't possible. I used to work in a very large campus environment with essentially lots of little IT environments, lots of little IT departments functioning. Some were great, and some were very poor. And I think that the way that if you can consider a tree diagram of the IT hierarchy at an organisation, and you've got kind of the site IT, and then you've got corporate IT, and so on and so forth. Ultimately, it's down to each individual at any point in that tree to oversee what's going on from their role downwards and make that work. And I saw some people that, despite all the cost pressures and balancing acts that had to take place, they were able to deliver, they were trusted, they were getting on with stuff, they were improving it, they were working to optimize the networking, they were preempting bottlenecks, all those things we talk about in the research as kind of, wouldn't it be great if everyone did that sort of stuff. Meanwhile, there'd be other people, it'd be fragmented, it'd be falling apart, there'd be firefighting, they wouldn't understand the business, everyone hated them, service level meetings and SLA setting meetings would just be people blankly staring at each other. So it really is down to individuals, not just at the CIO level, but wherever you are in the hierarchy, to make sure that your bit is working right.